Hi, and welcome to a very special Coworking, a podcast about what makes Coworking special. And this month, we're welcoming Jon Hormaetxe Castells, who has been working in the Coworking, Coliving, and community industries for 11 years, something like that, since 2014. First of all, Jon, many thanks for being here with us this month.
Thank you, Fanny. It's a big pleasure to be here with you.
Pleasure is shared. So I met Jon on LinkedIn, the internet, a very big place where you can meet all kind of people who are passionate about the same thing as you. So in our case, it's community and community-based spaces. When I saw everything I've been doing, I thought, okay, we've got to have it on the show and talk about it because Jon has been working. So usually my guests have been working in the co-working industry and sometimes in the co-living industry, but Jon is doing everything at the same time. So he's going to tell us all about it. But first of all, Jon, how did you start working into those industries? Because they're not so well known. And it's not like you have a kid dream saying, when I'm going to be a grown up, I'm going to be a co-working manager or something like that. So how did you dive into this?
It's funny that you ask me this question because it's actually my own story. When I was finishing university, I used to tell to my friends that I was going to be one day working with somebody that I don't know yet in a sector or in a business that doesn't exist. And that was in co-working. It was co-living back in 2015. But before that, I got into co-working. And the first time I heard about co-working, it was through a girlfriend I had. I'm originally from Bilbao. So back then I was living in Bilbao, and my girlfriend, or ex-girlfriend now, she used to work in a co-working space. Maybe it was around 2012, 2013. So very early days for co-working. And that's how I got into this new world. And it wasn't until 2014 that I started working in one of these co-working spaces. I became part of the team of the Melting Pot. The Melting Pot is a co-working space in Edinburgh. One of the first co-working spaces the founder was, and he's Claire Carpenter, a kind of famous person in Europe in the co-working scene. And back then, I wasn't really sure about what I really wanted to do with my life. I studied business. Like many people who study business, they enter there without knowing what they want to do with their lives, and they come out of the degree feeling exactly the same. But I knew that I wanted to be surrounded by people who have ideas, and that was the only thing I knew. So I thought maybe a co-working space could be that ideal spot where I could surround myself with other interesting brains. So that's how I got into co-working. I learned many of the things I know these days by myself. So I've been doing many different things when I was working in this co-working space. I was doing marketing stuff, social media, graphic design, business development, like many people who work in co-working, or many people who used to work in co-working, all of those small operators that were doing a bit of everything. And I also realized that it was a really exciting moment for co-working in Spain. I do relate a lot with that period, like 2013, 2014, 2015, where there were a lot of independent operators in Spain. Going to a co-working conference, it felt like going to a family conference. I went to a couple of co-working conferences in Spain, but I think there was a similar vibe in Europe where we were super passionate about community building, and it was, for many of these operators, it used to be a passion project. So I think I got really engaged with that movement. And then it wasn't until 2015 that in one of the co-working conferences, actually, it was a co-working Spain conference in Valencia. I flew from Edinburgh to Valencia, and that's where I met Eduardo, which he used to be my co-founder in the co-living space that we decided to open. So when I met Eduardo in this co-working conference, I was already planning to leave Edinburgh, but I was planning to go to Asia and to travel a bit. And actually, I met him in this conference, and he wasn't exactly there because he wanted to open a co-working space, but he was exactly there because he had a business a hospitality business. He used to run a hostel, and he was actually thinking about how he could be able to make the business run all year round. And back then, the first few digital nomads started coming out. It was 2014, and there were already maybe 1, 2, 3 co-living spaces in Europe. So it was this new trend of traveling and working remotely. These backpackers that were wearing their laptop with themselves, and a good opportunity for hospitality businesses or hostels or hotels to actually deseasonalize and attract digital nomads who necessarily don't need to travel during the peak seasons to fill up their spaces. And that's how I ended up moving to Alicante area. It's where I still live these days. Not
Okay.
exactly in Alicante, but it's a small
Yeah.
town on the coast between Alicante and Valencia called Javea.
Yes.
It's not Southeast Asia as I planned at the beginning, as my plan at the beginning. And it wasn't my plan to stay here for 10 years, but here I am still.
Mhm.
Now I have a kid, a family, and I'm in love with this region. So yeah, that's a bit more or less about how I got into co-working and then how I jumped from co-working to co-living. Although I still believe that at least the type of co-living we were doing back in 2015, it was very much oriented to remote working professionals. So it's kind
Yes.
of, so to say, a co-working space with accommodation, more or less, as I used to simplify so people could understand a bit what I was doing or what we were doing back then.
Yeah, I was going to ask that I love both co-working and co-living, but you could think that they're very different from one another. But you're just explaining it that the co-living you were working on, at least, was co-working with accommodation, so it's not that far apart.
Mm. No, it's not. And the interesting thing here is that, as I mentioned before, I knew how important was the element of community in a co-working space. So I came here to Javea
Mm-hmm.
to Spain with that knowledge of the importance of building community. And my co-founder, Eduardo, he used to run a hostel here. So he came with the expertise of
Mm-hmm.
running a hostel. So in the end, it came up that we were really good because we both were bringing the most important elements from both worlds to end up setting up this co-living space. But yeah, uh, depending on what type of co-living you provide, because I think one of the most challenging
Mm-hmm.
things in the co-living industry is that it has evolved in many different ways. So now it's still a bit hard for people to get an understanding of what co-living is or what type of people co-living space attracts. Um, but since I've been
Yeah.
involved in the type of co-living that attracts mostly digital nomads and remote workers, the similarities
Mm-hmm.
between a co-working space and a co-living space of this type are are very similar, or well, very similar. I will say, like the workspace is there and the community is there. On top of that, you also provide accommodation, but there are very important
Mm-hmm.
two elements that are also present in the co-living spaces that are mostly for digital nomads.
Yeah, because you cater to this very specific audience, those very specific customers who are digital nomads, remote workers, as you're saying, they really need a workspace. They really need community because they're in a space where they might not know many people. And on top of that, if you can also provide accommodation, it's cherry on the cake.
Yeah, that's a bit the simplification of what we do. So yeah.
And that's how you started to work in the co-working and then in the co-living industries. Now you've been working on multiple projects, I've seen. How is it going today? How do you manage all those different projects? Why did you start them? How is it? What does it look like today?
As I said before, we started this co-living space called San & Co back in 2015, and San & Co has been
Yes.
operating for 10 years. And
Mm.
sadly, or because everything has an end, San & Co closed
Mm.
its doors in June this year, after 10 years
Wow.
of
Mm.
operations.
Mm.
So for those 10 years, I was part for around 8 of those. So I quit Tenanco in 2023, 2 years ago.
Mhm.
For a small operator as we were, I went through all the different areas of responsibilities, from being a
Yeah.
host to marketing, social media, sales, operations, maintenance. I think you go through all the phases, which it gives you a
Yeah.
lot of knowledge and expertise on understanding how the business like this works.
Yeah.
I I I also not only I went through all the different areas of running a co-living space, but also of running a hostel, because I didn't mention before, but I think one of the successful models that Sananco had, it was it was a hybrid model. As I said before, when I first met Eduardo, he used to run a hostel, and that hostel was doing really well during the summer, but the summer was really short. So maybe
Mhm.
July and August, it were like good months, but the rest of the year used to be empty. And that's how we fit the co-living model into this business, because we used to run the co-living space from September until June. So we used to have two different brands. Brand used to be the co-living space, attracting digital nomads and remote workers on an average stay of 3 weeks to 1 month. And then during the summer months, completely different brand. It used to be called Youth Hostel Havea, and then different capacity. Average stay was 2 nights, groups, holidays, summer. But the combination of
Yes.
both, it felt quite clever, and that gave us like a quite strong fundament. So I also went through managing a hostel, being a receptionist. So I've done all of that. And a
Yeah.
couple of years ago, I decided that it was time for me to go, to find my own path. So I started
Mhm.
freelancing and doing consultancy work. With all the knowledge at my back,
Mhm.
I decided to, and all the knowledge at my back, and also understanding what is that element that I enjoy the most and that I feel I can bring the biggest value, which it was around community building. I decided to call myself community experience designer, just
Yes.
because I think I always been quite in love with design. It's an element that I really like, any time of design,
Mhm.
from service design, I mentioned before, graphic design, or even interior design. So I was always a bit jealous of these designers, how cool it has to be a designer, and all those friends I have that all some of them were designers, and it felt like, oh, that's a cool job to have. So probably
Mhm.
now I'm also a designer, so I feel like one of them. So I decided to
Mm.
start my own consultancy design, one day maybe a studio on community building. So
Mm.
that gave me a few projects that I've been working on. I've been helping other co-living spaces with their whole guest experience design, members clubs. Currently, I'm working on a kind of senior retreat company, like retreats for senior people, for people who are just retired. And my
Yeah.
expertise is all around community and guest experience. But besides this kind of personal project, consultancy project, from the very beginning, I have been also part of two projects. One is called Nomadico, and Nomadico is a
Yes.
network of co-living spaces for digital nomads. We partner with local guest houses or hostels to help them set up a great co-living space and we help them attract digital nomads to each of these locations. So it's quite enough interesting because the inspiration of Nomadicov came from San and Co. Because in reality, what we do
Yes.
is we bring digital nomads out of their touristic season to a specific destination, and we help local guest houses or hostels uh, deseasonalize. We help them attract digital nomads only out of season. So we leave them do their business during the peak season so they can keep working as usual. But during their low seasons, we partner with them to attract digital nomads and stay in different parts of the world. And I think this is an
Yeah.
interesting business, and I really love working these days. And I'm part of the co-founding team. And I love the fact that we can help local businesses. And I love the fact that we can also make co-living affordable, because it's also true that
Yeah.
co-living for digital nomads in general, it has some prices that it might not be accessible for many of the pockets out there. So I'm also feeling proud that because we have this model of working with partners that only during the low season we can make also co-living affordable, and we are already in 11 locations. And this we are in quite an interesting moment now after 2 years. I think we have find out uh, elements in the experience that are making things work really well, and people are having a good experience. And the NPS score, for example, this last quarter was 62 or 63 out of
Mm-hmm.
100. For those that know how the NPS score in definition is, that we are people are having a good experience, and we are driving more bookings than ever. So I think it's an exciting moment for us at Nomadico. And again, this is just a project around digital nomads, which in the end is what I've been doing for all these past years. Um, and then my last kind
Yeah.
of leg, the last project that I'm involved with is Rural. It with hard double O Rural,
Yes.
and we are helping
Yes.
villages in Spain in risk of the population through remote work to revitalize them, and we have a permanent base now in Benarrabá in the south of Spain next to Malaga, and it's yes, a beautiful project where through remote work we are trying to attract digital nomads to stay there, but also help local young people to learn the skills of remote working so they don't have to leave the town, and also bring a lot of energy and
Mm-hmm.
vibes into the town. So yeah, so people decide to stay because there are things happening, and also the remote workers not just for a few weeks, but also feeling that there is a movement there, decide to stay there and live in the countryside. And actually, one of the biggest challenges that many co-living spaces have is usually building the bridge between the locals and the co-living. For many co-living spaces who attract digital nomads who stay for 3 weeks, 1 month, is usually a big challenge to integrate that into the local environment. Um, but in this case, the locals are before or in the center of the experience. First, we ask a local if everything is fine. Second, we ask a guest if everything is fine. So if locals are not happy, then it doesn't make sense what we
Mm-hmm.
do. And it's beautiful to see how both world. And yeah, for rural, I'm working only as a helping them with the strategy. So that's a bit
Yes.
about me involved in this kind of areas of my personal project as a community experience designer, and then also as a co-founder and head of experience with Nomadico, and helping Rural with the strategy.
Yeah, and what I love is that those two projects they help highlight unknown destination. One with Nomadico is promoting well-known destination for summer for tourism, but during the off season, during the season where usually is no one, and making them attractive, showing how they're attractive during also those during winters, during low seasons. On the other side, with rural, you're promoting not so well known destinations, maybe during summer, during winters, and showing that places we don't know much at the time, maybe, for example, low season, we don't know much. We don't think about going there, but they're as attractive as some really hot spot for tourism.
Yeah, in the end, I think when you travel and work remotely, usually you do it alone. So
Mm,
the main challenge usually comes understanding where are those people
mhm,
like you, and how are you going to be able to meet them.
yeah.
And there are some co-working spaces, for example, that are really local, and that they get of the clients are people who actually live in the city. So that unless you spend a lot of time in that co-working space, it's going to be hard for you to meet other people. But there are other co-working spaces or co-living spaces that are mostly focused on digital nomads, which means that people who stay there maybe less time, the amount of energy that people want to put into meeting other people is higher. So those are the spots where a digital nomad wants to make sure they know where they are in order to go there. Sometimes it's a co-working space, sometimes it's a full city. For example, an example of Bansko in Bulgaria, it's a famous one where
Yes.
it's a digital nomad village, and the biggest digital nomad conference happens there every summer. But there are other locations in South Asia, like in Chiang Mai or in Lombok, or different hotspots are where that maybe people tend to go there just because they know that they might be able to find other digital nomads that are also willing to meet other people like them. And then in the co-living spaces that I'm involved, in the end, that's exactly what you provide, right? It's the guarantee that if you go to one of these co-living spaces, as soon as you enter from the door, you will be able to meet other people like you. It's like making friends instantly, right? It's this
Mm.
fantasy where you don't know anyone, you arrive in a city, and as soon as you cross the door, bam, you have 15 people that you can hang out with. Um, and I think that's one of the positive things that brings co-living, as well as, of course, the proper workspace to work from and the comfort of staying in a house that it feels like a home. Yeah, that's I think more or less what people are searching for, where they choose one location versus the other. If none of these co-living spaces will be in any of these unknown destinations, probably
Yeah.
harder for a digital nomad to decide, okay, let's go here because uh, it might be impossible to meet anyone. Yeah, always.
Mm.
I think co-living is allowing people to discover new places. And I think that's the mission that we have behind Nomadico. Maybe not yet because we are not big enough or not that many people know us yet. But the idea is in the future, once we have a bigger community, to be able to provide our community of those location of the beaten track that are actually really hidden, that you cannot go there if that you wouldn't go because there is no community or good internet maybe at some point. But it's because Nomadico is there, you get the guarantee that you will find
Yeah.
like-minded people and a good workspace. And that's what most people value the most, I think, when they are able to discover these new places, but with the security that they will be able to do their meetings and work productively no matter where they are.
Yeah, and that sounds like a beautiful dream to me. And it can allow smaller towns, smaller villages to also attract people. And not just, I was hearing that in Barcelona, they're asking tourists to not come anymore because there are too many of them. And Barcelona is great, but there are also many other great city, towns, villages where you can visit, and it's sad to see everybody just going to the same main attraction, which are great. They ought
Hmm.
to be seen, but there are also many other great places elsewhere.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's a bit the idea, right? Like, how can we support
Yes.
um, the movement so we don't damage the destinations that are more in danger, right? For example, Lisbon as well, it has been like big the topic of nomads there,
Yeah.
and I think it has been slowing down lately. But the same way written on the wall in Barcelona, get tourists go home. Yeah, I think you can already see, or you could already see in Lisbon, not even tourists but nomads go home. No, so nomads getting like really bad press because of the gentrification. But that's a bit the goal, right? How can we
Yes.
still provide that experience for people to travel, but only in those places that it's needed or that they appreciate the extra effort, right? That's why we don't work in the high season with those locations because, again, also like maybe it's not needed to bring more people during those times.
Yeah, and that's lead us to the next topic. What's next? you've already done a lot of things with Nomadico and Rural, but maybe you have yet another project. Or maybe it's not another project, but it's another version of the project we were working on, how to make them different or bigger or grow. Just that.
So the future now, we'll see which business evolves more or the other. But it's true that I'm putting most of my energy currently at Nomadico. If the energy I'm putting there leads to bigger growth, probably in the upcoming months or year, maybe my main focus is only with Nomadico. Currently, I'm not full time, but maybe if this company keeps growing as it is now, and also considering that I'm one of the co-founders and that I love what I do, actually, I love waking up and sitting on my laptop and focusing on this specific project. I actually love all of them, but as this one is, it might be as well growing and require more of my attention. Maybe this is what the future is gonna be leading, and maybe that's where I'm mostly dedicating my time in that.
Yeah, no. So glad to hear that it's growing and looking forward to see how it evolves and what it looks like in a few months or few years.
Yeah, I'm excited too as well. So yeah, we'll see. You start hearing more about it soon.
Yeah, yeah. And we're slowly coming to an end, but before that, I wanted to ask if there was one last thing you wanted to talk about before we close by.
The first thing that comes to my mind, it's understanding well, or understanding, no, but an open question maybe, right? Because I see the co-living industry growing so much. I'm actually attending the co-living conference next week in Barcelona, probably by the time that this podcast is live. It already happened. But it's kind of the biggest conferences around co-living. So I'm curious also to understand which level of importance community has, because I also see the co-working movement growing so much, and I'm also doubting about where are we putting, at which level are we allocating community and the importance of building a strong community when we are building co-working or co-living spaces. So just, it is just an open question for me as well. But which level of importance are we giving to community in both co-working and co-living? And hopefully, we can identify easier those ones who are actually putting co-living at the heart of what they do.
Yes.
At least to help those clients and even other stakeholders to support that if they feel it's the most important element.
Yeah. And in co-working, I love to talk about co-working and flex business. And co-living, I would say, is co-living and flex housing. And both are great, both are interesting, both are for different people, and there's no one size fits all. So we need a bit of everything and a true diversity in the offers.
Totally. Totally. It's true that in co-living, there is also this trend of flex living. It's very similar to what you just shared. And there is a space for all, for sure. And actually, we'll see how are we going to call it in the future, right? Because I don't know if in the co-working industry is clear that co-working is connected to community, but in the co-living industry is not. And co-living doesn't necessarily mean that community is attached to it, but it doesn't matter. Like maybe one day it has a different name, and as far as as far as people can identify, then that's fine.
Yeah. Thank you so much for meeting up today and talking about what we both love, community, co-living, and co-working. If people want to know more about you, your journey, want to contact you, or to know more about your project, Nomadico and Rural, where can they reach out?
The easiest, it will be on LinkedIn. As I know you have been struggling a bit to pronounce my surname, maybe it's better if they can find it in the caption or a direct link to my LinkedIn profile.
But I always add the links in the description so that you can just click on it.
Yeah, but for those who are a bit more familiar with the Basque surnames, my name is Jon Hormaetxe Castells. And yeah, I think best is to find me on LinkedIn, and then from there, they can navigate to the 3 different projects that I've been talking about.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll keep talking, community, and catching up again on LinkedIn.
Thank you so much.
Bye bye.
Ciao, ciao.